You're listening to Jonesy and Brown.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the world famous Jonesy and Brown show. That is Mike Jones. I am John Brown. Hey man, we getting ready for the NFC Championship game. We are one game away from the big game. Mike Jones, are you superstitious?
No, not really.
Okay. So you're not somebody that says, hey, I'm not going to mention Super Bowl. I'm not going to, you don't believe in jinxing chances or anything like that?
No, I'm not on the team.
Okay. No, I hear you. I was talking to my son earlier, and he's saying he didn't want to mention the word Super Bowl yet. And I'm like, look, all right, whatever. Each their own. Okay.
It's called, but you know,
and you do what you have to do to get by. Whatever you need to protect your mentals, go ahead and do that. That's
I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess, do whatever you need to do, but I think people who aren't going to be wearing green and white on Sunday get a little too carried away.
All right, I hear you.
I mean, if you're on the team and you have your little routine that gets you in, fine.
Yeah.
If you're on the team and you need to stay locked in on Washington so you don't want to think about anything past it, great. If you're not on the team,
if you do not get a paycheck from the Philadelphia Eagles,
then I'm fairly certain you have very little impact on the outcome of the game. With the one exception of, if you're part of the 60,000 people that'll be there cheering on game day, then you might have a small effect. Because if you stop cheering, the other 59,999 will still be cheering.
Yeah.
But,
No, I understand. I understand, man. Now I was having a moment of old as I'm talking to him, because he was talking about him and his girlfriend going down to Xfinity Live to watch the game, and I was just like, yeah, no, I'm good.
I'm so cool. Everybody who's got it in them to go out there and bear the crowds, and the traffic and paper parking. And
See,
have a great time.
There you go. He's about to be 22. So you know what? Yeah, you go down there, you have all the fun, you soak in all that atmosphere and all that humanity. Me, I'm about to be 49. I'm cool. No, thank you. I'm going to soak up the couch. I'm going to eat my chips. I'm going to drink my beer or my liquor, and I'm going to watch the game at home.
Now, the one thing I will say, it is much better to drive somewhere into the city and then just take the Broad Street line down to the stadium rather than trying to actually park at the stadium.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Now, I will admit, as a kid, because that was part of the game experience. When I was a kid and my dad would take me to games, we'd drive down Broad and Olney, and we would park at Broad and Olney and then catch the subway straight down Broad Street. And that was back when, and it was a little bit different because you would come up the stairs or the escalator from the subway station, and that's when the stadiums were right there at the top of the steps. So you come up as you're a little kid, the vet just looks huge.
Coming up the steps, looking straight at it.
And you looking straight at it. The vet looks huge, and it's the Spectrum too. And it's like it was larger than life. And you remember that last year of the Spectrum when like Villanova and Temple and the Sixers all played one last game there. We went to that last game for the Sixers. Sixers played the Bulls. One last game in the Spectrum. And I just remember that was like the first time in the Spectrum in probably about 10, 15 years. And I'm just like, wow, I really don't remember this arena being this small. It's you just in there.
Tight space.
That concourse is way different.
And if you remember back into the 80s, by the time you got to the fourth quarter of a game, you'd look up and just see that cloud of smoke floating there at the top of the stadium.
Spectrum smell like piss and cigarette butts and cheap beer.
That's about it.
Oh, man. All right. Look, man, we got NFC Championship game. We back again. Back again. How do you feel?
Are you surprised?
No. Absolutely not.
And that's one thing I will say. Last week, we had a nice little back and forth on Jalen Hurts' performance. But at no point did either of us think that the Rams were going to win that game.
No. In fact, I felt like, and a lot of how I felt about that Rams game, I feel about this game coming up, in the sense that I felt like there was a dialogue that came with going into this game. It was a dialogue about Jalen Hurts and the passing game. And I felt going into the Rams game that more than likely the Eagles were going to win, but it wasn't going to satisfy that conversation. I felt like we could come back the week after with the same questions and the same issues.
So here's the thing about the Rams game. And I said this last week. The Rams defense was somewhat undersized compared to the Eagles offensive line.
Yes.
Which was a perfect setup for the Eagles offensive line to physically dominate for Saquon and beat them up. And by the second half, you'll see Saquon getting loose, which is pretty much what happened. This last week against the Rams was not the game where we should have expected Hurts to throw for 250, 300. That just wouldn't have been a smart game plan. So, assuming the Eagles played smart football last week, and they did, we weren't going to get many answers about the passing game. There were a couple miscues, but that being said, Hurts was 15 of 20, 75%. The one issue I think we all have with him, he held the ball a little too long. Sometimes you take some sacks that you shouldn't have. Like, that's my one thing. Like, when I see his completion percentage at 70 or whatever it is, maybe for some games, my one thought is like, yeah, you were efficient, but how many of those should you have just thrown the ball away instead of taking a sack? Maybe your passing percentage, completion percentage should have been slightly lower so you could throw the ball away and save some yards. But we're nitpicking here. We're talking about what I believe is the best team in the NFC and arguably the best roster in the NFL. I would argue the most complete roster remaining in the playoffs. Washington's defense, not so great. Gave up 500 plus yards to Detroit. One because of the turnovers. Jalen Hurts doesn't turn it over, but before we even get into Washington, just looking back at the Rams game, that game was set up to go exactly how it did.
Yes.
Inclement weather, freezing cold, snow, a power running game, and a somewhat undersized defense. If the Eagles had approached that game,
undersized defense meaning the Rams, not the Eagles. Okay.
The Rams, yeah. So if the Eagles had approached that game with a game plan to do anything other than run the ball, I would have had an issue. Saquon went for 255 against them the first time and over 200 this time. He's got over 500 yards of total offense in 2 games against the Rams. It would have made no sense to go any other way. But
go ahead.
Last thing, real quick. I still would like to see the ball get out of Hurts's hands a little quicker sometimes.
I think so. But honestly, I feel like going into this game with the Commanders, I'm not sure this is going to be that game either.
No. There's a 30th ranked rushing defense in the league.
Yeah, I don't believe it. Unfortunately, what that's going to leave us with, hopefully will be an Eagles win and 2 more weeks to talk about.
And see, there's the thing. That's really the question that keeps coming up. Can the Eagles win playing this style and with the quarterback playing this way? If they had to play Detroit, I might think not. Because Detroit was the one team who could go blow for blow with them offensively. Having Washington had taken care of Detroit for us, I don't see anyone left that the Eagles can't beat this way, at least not in the NFC, and get to the Super Bowl.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I'm done.
Okay. I feel like if you're moving forward, you're looking at the teams and you're saying, can the Eagles beat a team with this type of offense? You have to ask. I think there's also questions that you have to ask with that.
Absolutely.
And one of those questions is, I feel like if you're going to beat this Eagles team,
you're going to have to go score on our defense.
Yeah, an offense has to score at least 3 touchdowns. And it's like, can the Commanders put up 3 touchdowns? At least 3?
Well, can they? Yes, they put up 5 on us the last time we played.
But that was that was a different type of game. The
last game they scored 5 touchdowns. Yeah. Now that being said, it was in Washington. Chauncey Gardner-Johnson was ejected from the defense, and the offense was unable to dominate the time of possession and control the ball in the manner they normally would, with their starting quarterback having left 5 minutes into the game. So, yeah, there definitely some nuance to be discussed. Like, yeah, but can they score 3 touchdowns? Yes. So far through the playoffs, both conferences, the rookie's been playing the best football out of all the quarterbacks.
Oh yeah,
not to say their team has been playing better than every other team.
Oh, Daniels is the truth,
Isolating simply the quarterback, he's been playing the best football of all the quarterbacks in the playoffs so far.
And I honestly, it's crazy to think about this, but to me, as we're now watching the Eagles and the Commanders play to go to a Super Bowl, and you're watching angry Cowboys fans everywhere just be jealous and full of hate, and you're looking at it, and it's like, it's so glaringly obvious why those guys hate this Eagles team, and they're going to begin to hate that Washington team, because both of those teams are built. They're solidly built. You look at the quarterback that they drafted, good solid running back that they drafted, number 1 wide receiver that they drafted. These are guys that they brought in. They're recognizing talent, and they're stocking their team up with talent. These aren't a whole bunch of free agent guys that you pick from here and there. They're built. That Washington team is starting to be built from the ground up, and it's like, okay, I need to watch that team. So I need to see how that team grows. They might not be ready this year, but this is a team that you might have to watch out for. This might be that team that you're looking at going down the line.
So they have quarterback on a rookie deal for 4 more years after this one, which means you have 4 years basically to play with a loaded roster before any kind of extension kicks in for the quarterback. That's You know, I've been talking about this for years. You pay the quarterback, you're gonna shed talent. It's just how the numbers work. Unless Howie Roseman is your GM, but you know that's the one caveat. Otherwise, you pay the quarterback, you're going to shed a lot of talent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Howie will pay the quarterback, and then they keep adding talent. But
exactly,
you
know, that's our guy. You know, you can't have him.
but for everybody else,
yeah.
So while this year Washington, you look at them, McLaurin's a good receiver, the number 2, and then running back Brian Robinson, he's solid, not great, but he's solid.
He's solid.
He's solid.
You know, no, that's a good dude. I mean,
yeah, he's solid.
Mm-hmm.
He's not great. He's not on the Saquon level.
No. Well,
he's not on the Derrick Henry level.
Oh yeah. Well, who is? You know,
I wouldn't actually say he's on the Josh Jacobs or Bijan Robinson level.
Okay.
But he's good.
Enough. Okay.
And then defensively, there's definitely a lot to be desired still. Yeah, they beat Detroit, but they gave up 500 some yards. You're the number 30 ranked run defense in the league.
Mm-hmm. Now,
this year,
okay, go ahead, make it
real quick. So this year, I'd be shocked simply because of roster construction. To see Washington get beyond this week. But next year, the year after, when you go into the offseason with the whole league having seen what this rookie QB could do, and you have a lot of cap space to fill in around him, that's where it gets interesting. Do you remember after Jalen Hurts? Before that, Carson Wentz's rookie year. What happened the next year? Alshon Jeffrey and Torrey Smith and these guys want to come play with him. Jalen Hurts, even after his rookie year, A.J. Brown, he's excited to come to Philly and play with him. When receivers and players around the league see a talented young rookie quarterback, they're excited to go play with them.
Yeah, a talented young rookie quarterback, and the team has got some dough.
But that's why a talented young quarterback is exciting, because he's good enough to win with, and he's also allows receivers to get their big 3-4 year. They got a 3-4 year window. They could sign for 3-4 years with big money and not hurt the team because the quarterback isn't getting $60 million a year yet.
Yep.
So that's that window where you can get veterans in their prime for 4 years and really load your roster. Next year, I think Washington is extremely dangerous, assuming they have a good off season.
And granted, their front office ain't our front office.
No, but they appear
because
to be
who can beat Howie? But we have shown how the right moves can completely flip your team defensively. You look at how this team ended. You look at how this Eagles team ended last year defensively, and where they are this year. Yes, last year to end the season, that defense was terrible.
This year, the Eagles
is not terrible. Very, very, very not terrible.
This year, easily the best defense you've had since the late Jim Johnson was coaching.
Exactly. All right, our guest is here, sir. Now, this guest has made some come-ups, man. And this man's a superstar now, and I was able to get him. You know, he's traded in, spending a couple minutes with us every season. To now, he's got his own show, his own situation with PHLY Sports. I still believe it should be Fly Sports, but I still think it should be Fly. But whatever, man. PHLY Sports, yes. He's out there hanging. He's out there, got his show. Let's welcome him back to the show. Glad to have him on. My man Jason Ashworth. Thank you, sir. Thanks for spending some time with us. Thank you for fitting us in your schedule. Mr. Superstar.
No, my man JB. When you reached out the other, I always got time. You know that. You know that, man. You're good people. You're good people to me. You know that, brother.
Jonesy, I thought I would have to introduce myself to him. Excuse me, Jason. How you doing? My name.
Don't be a clown now. Don't you be a clown now.
My name is Brown. I have a small little podcast. I was wondering if you could make some time for us. Hey, man, tell us about the new situation, man. We're really happy for you. That's really blowing up. I'm proud of your work, man. Tell us about it, though.
I appreciate that. PHLY, right? We started up a network. They've got them in a couple different cities throughout the country. They have obviously Philly is running their version of it, led by Anthony Gargano. And E-Rock, Black Gritty, we all kind of linked up, got together. We're going to put on a show for them, which kind of gives us free reign to kind of cover what we want. We're in Philadelphia. All right. So we kind of play the hits, which is the Philadelphia Eagles, right? That's what we're going to lean on.
Yes, sir.
But we have a lot of flexibility to kind of go in directions that we want to. Ultimately for us, like any of us would do, we chop it up, right? It's just an opportunity to shove a mic in front of your face, get a camera in front, and just you have some time to chop it up and talk about what we're all passionate about. So we're having fun. We love it. We got shows out mainly on Wednesdays.
Okay.
7 o'clock on PHLY. You can find it on YouTube TV. You can find it on Comcast. We're streaming all over the time. It's just for now, JB. It's just fun. You know what it is. You know exactly what I'm talking about when I say
it. It looks like a lot of fun. Like me and you, we've been cool for a long time. Me and E-Rock kind of cool. I don't know him very well, but enough to always be daps. Always love when I see him. I've never the other brother, Black Gritty. I don't know him at all, but he always seems like a funny dude. Show's always very entertaining, man.
So let me say this too, because I've gotten a lot of people ask those questions too, like, well, hey, how's E-Rock? And hey, how's Black Gritty? So let me just take the moment real quick to say on each of them, because now, like, I know them through social media, but now I know them intimately. And I'll say for E-Rock, he is one of the most authentic, most genuine, good egg, one of the best representatives of Philadelphia and the Philadelphia Eagles that you can find. Black Gritty, one of the smartest, wittiest, and just sharp intellects in terms of what he knows and then what he knows about the business. So don't let his humor fool you. My man is one of the most intelligent out there. He really does. I'm impressed with both of them. Every time I get in the studio with both of them, I learn something. And I'm very thankful to get to work with both of those guys.
Now you've been doing this for a little bit though. You're a veteran to the podcast genre.
You call me old? You say I'm old? Is that what you say?
Season. I'm not going to call old. Season.
All right, fair enough.
Now, what else makes this different from other podcasts that you worked on?
Well, it's studio based, right? And I like that. We've all had, we've all done our fair share of podcasts. I like the fact that it is studio based. It is very different. It is a startup. So with any startup, I mean, there's always challenges and things you got to work through in a startup situation. I wouldn't say it's that much different, but it gives a real professional vibe when you go in there, because the studio itself, they got 3 or 4 separate studios. First of all, it's phenomenal crew just from the talent that they bring in for the various shows, the producers that they have. It's a phenomenal group of human beings that work for PHLY. So I think first and foremost, that makes it different, because if we've been around the business long enough, that's not always the easiest thing to find. Really good group of people, but it's a very professional feel when you're inside those studios and those lights flick on and it's go time. You're doing something real. So from that perspective, I think that's just different than maybe what we're used to sometimes out of podcasts.
Jonesy, I think it's time for the Jonesy and Brown takeover over at PHLY.
Let's go.
We have to find that open door somewhere, that back door. We sneak in. We throw the hoodies up real quick. Yeah.
Right. Nah, see, you got to just come in, hoodie down, burst the door open, just kick the door open.
Exactly. Exactly. Like who are those guys right there on that microphone? I don't know them. Do they have passes? Do they have IDs? No.
I got an Eagles hoodie and some Timbs on. Let me in.
Right, you belong.
Exactly.
You'll find your way.
Exactly. We'll figure it out.
That's funny.
All right.
So listen, I heard y'all talking as I was waiting, and Jonesy, I think you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about young wide receivers wanting to go find that young quarter, not necessarily young wide receivers, but just wide receivers that want to go find that young quarterback. And it's not necessarily, we'll see what Washington does this year, but with $90 million to spend and free agent wide receivers like Stephon Diggs and T. Higgins and Amari Cooper and Chris Godwin, like there's going to be a group of names out there for Washington to go have kind of the pick of the litter, if you will. So something that obviously from an NFC East perspective, I'm sitting here listening to you and I'll say, yeah, no, that's 100% right. They may not, who knows what happens this Sunday, but this is a team moving forward that they made a lot of change. They got new ownership, a new GM, a new coach, nice young new quarterback. They made a lot of changes on both sides of the football. So they're definitely an up-and-comer and somebody Eagles fans need to pay attention to. We know that.
Yeah. DC ain't going nowhere. They ain't going nowhere.
Yeah.
So speaking of their quarterback, I made the statement that from what I've seen so far, I believe Jaden Daniels is playing the best football of any quarterback in the playoffs. So at this point,
you asked me to jump on that?
What?
Because I will.
My question would be, what is your impression? What has stood out to you about Jaden Daniels from what you've seen so far?
Well, what stood out to me is poise. First and foremost, the kid, because again, he's a rookie, and what they ask him to do as a rookie, I don't want to say it's unprecedented because I don't want to speak in hyperbole, but it's not too many quarterbacks come in as a rookie and bear the burden that Washington, and not even a burden, but bear the responsibility that Washington has put on his shoulders. And on top of that, he's delivering. Now, I do think there's a little bit of pause for various reasons. I mean, we did the same exact thing to C.J. Stroud last year. Obviously, in their sophomore year, you've got tape. DCs know what to do with you, or at least how to try to throw you off your game. So we'll see what a sophomore year looks like. And I also think context matters. I really do. Again, just in terms of the overall dynamic of Jaden Daniels and the level that he's playing at, he hasn't, in my opinion anyway, in this 7-game win streak, he hasn't faced particularly stout defenses. Now, granted, he played the Eagles one time and did beat the Eagles and threw for 5 touchdown passes. But you're talking about defense such as the Titans, which have a good overall yardage defense, but not a good pass defense. You have the Saints in there, the Falcons in there, the Cowboys in there. 2 impressive wins in the postseason. And I think that erases anything that I just said, because at the end of the day, in the postseason, that's all it's about, getting that W. But again, we all know the Lions defense is not a good defense. They're decimated
extremely
on that
banged
side.
up.
You know what I mean? So I am equally impressed with his poise and the responsibility they put on him. But I also look at that and say, okay, for example, do it on Sunday against the Eagles if I'm really going to buy in with both feet set in stone saying real deal. Love the kid, love what he's done so far, but his job ain't done.
Absolutely. So that being said, if you're the Eagles defense, what's your plan of attack for a guy like Jalen Hurts? Not Jaden Daniels.
Jaden Daniels. Then that's a question for Vic, right? This is his 3rd time that he gets to see Jaden this season. And the trick is with a guy like Jaden Daniels, that he doesn't typically see a lot of pressure up the middle. Now Cosme's out, and they're going to have Trent Scott in there. So maybe that'll affect kind of where the pressure comes from. But the trick with a guy like Jaden Daniels is the way that they run their offense. First and foremost, they have an okay running game. So they can run this almost like this triple option, if you will, where they can hand the ball off. They got a decent running game. He's extremely quick with his progressions and his reads, but he's got legs too. So it makes him very difficult to defend. And if you over pursue from the outside, you try to get that pressure from the outside, he can make plays with his legs. He can obviously extend the pocket and throw downfield. He's shown that, but he can also run. How you contain that, brother, if I had the answer, I wouldn't be on a podcast. I'd be in the Eagles locker room devising a game plan right now. But I would think a lot of that is going to have to be around containment, keeping your lanes, shrinking that pocket. Easier said than done, especially with how quickly he goes through his progressions, and he's shown that so far.
Okay. Well, you said.
Tell me. What do you think? What would you do?
I would, rather than have my edge rushers just going recklessly at the quarterback, I'd rather try to have them hold the edge and contain, and trust Jalen Carter and Milton Williams up the gut to make his life uncomfortable. Because at this point, excuse me, I all year have not seen anyone capable of keeping Jalen Carter out of the backfield. So
Mm-hmm.
that would be my plan.
I mean, you talked about that, Jonesy. You talked about that last week. You talked about how basically how they were going to wear down the Rams, and you saw it in that game, and specifically how the game ended with Carter getting the sack, and then Carter make with the hurry that forces the overthrow on fourth down. The sack on third down, the overthrow on fourth down. Those were both Carter's. Those were both Carter plays after they had spent most of the game double teaming Carter. So eventually, that's death and taxes right there. Eventually, it's going to get to you, and that's got to be Carter as well. They're going to double team him early. They're going to work him early, but he has to be able to, to stick with it. So you got. It's going to be up to Williams. It's going to be up to Davis. They're going to be the ones that have to make those plays up the middle, and your edge rusher is going to have to contain him, keep and keep Daniel somewhat locked up on Sunday.
Yeah, you talk about a home wrecker, right? You talk about just a disruption in the interior of your line. Like Jalen Carter is everything that this city, or at least the league, thought that he would, and more. Single-handedly. Yeah. And I get it, right? No game is really boiled down to one play, but every game has certain impact and key plays within it that decide the outcome. And that last series, you could say single-handedly won them the football game just with those two plays. And keep this in mind, he's not coming off the field. So it's not like he's one of the few guys that does not rotate. He'll play 94% of the snaps. So for him and his conditioning to be as impactful when he is needed in the guts of the game, gotta have it to not only turn a 3rd and 2 into a 4th and 11, and then that very next play, go ahead and disrupt that and to cause the overthrow. And like I said, single-handedly win the Eagles that football game. Jalen Carter is a beast, and he's somebody they're going to have to figure out, especially with Cosme out, who's their best interior lineman, probably their best lineman. That's going to be a big ask for Trent Scott. That's going to be a big ask for that guy to come in and have to deal. Now, the way Washington manipulates their line, they run a lot of slide protections. So he'll have that double team, and they should be able to at least minimize, in theory, what Carter could do. But we saw it in the first matchup of the season. Jalen Carter slipped one of his they had a pulling guard slip through and got Robinson in the backfield, where I'm telling you, it's plays like this that I think, especially with Jalen Carter, it's plays like that where he makes a tackle in the backfield. We think, hey, nice play, Carter. All right. But when you go back and look at it again, which I did today, if Carter doesn't make that tackle, Robinson's off to the races. And we only see that in the moment of, all right, cool, nice tackle for a loss. No, that was a touchdown-saving tackle. We just didn't realize it in the moment. So Carter, to me, stacks those up game in, game out. He destroys plays before they can ever come, big plays, before they can ever come to fruition. And he's a big, big part of the reason that they have the number 1 defense in the
NFL. He's a beast. He's a monster. It's crazy to think going into this season, we were wondering how this defensive line could manage with Fletcher Cox retiring. And now, we got the answer to that question. Jonesy, you and I talked about it. It was like Cox had to be in that locker room day in and day out, and he's watching Jalen Carter train, and he's like, you know what? I'm good. It's time to walk away, walk off into the sunset. This defensive line is in good hands because this man is a beast. Imagine letting one of the greatest defensive tackles in franchise history walk away and replacing him with what might be able to be the next greatest defensive tackle in team history. I know. I understand it's early. I know it's early, but he's been that good so far.
Let me hit you with this. How about this? How about taking an all-timer and Fletcher Cox, replacing him, and getting better? And we can. You can look at it with multiple players on multiple sides, right? We came into the season, you're right. Fletcher Cox, how do we replace him? In comes Jalen Carter, don't miss a beat. Oh, my God, Hall of Famer Jason Kelsey, how do we replace him? Anybody talking about Jason Kelce this year? No disrespect to Jason Kelce. But has anybody said, man, you know what? Cam Jurgens just really isn't Jason Kelce. No, you got a Pro Bowler. Now, we'll see if he plays this week. Obviously, that's a big if. We got to pay attention to that. But point being, I don't think we're looking at the center position the way many of us might have feared coming into the season. Now, let's get into the season. You lose Brandon Graham, and we say, well, he was our most productive edge rusher. Well, Nolan Smith comes in, finally starts flashing, right? He's made a real big presence for himself. Now, he closed the season real strong. But now here he's got 2 sacks in the postseason, a forced fumble. Okay, someone's starting to come alive. Oh, but hold on, Nakobe Dean goes down. Oren Burks steps in, and I'm not telling you Oren Burks is the world, but Oren Burks steps in, and I'm telling you right now, he played himself a really nice football game. You got Zach Bond with the green dot, and he had himself a hell of a football game. So I think we always say this in football, next man up, right? And obviously in Philadelphia, thanks to 2017, we understand it. We really buy into it and believe it. But even on a roster, even on a team like the 24 Eagles, where we say that's a phenomenal 22, like the 22 starters on this team are really freaking good. The 53 is really good because the guys stepping in are playing some pretty good football right now.
That front office guy, you know, that Howie guy, he really seems to know what he's doing, you know.
Tell me about it.
I almost feel bad for calling for his job 2 years ago.
Yeah, almost. And quite frankly, you know what? That's been our roller coaster. Where, you know, this is actually the 87th show of Jonesy and Brown that we've done together, and we probably called for and praised Howie Roseman 1,000 times. You know, we've done whole shows that, all right, it's time to get rid of this guy. I admit that when Doug was out the door, I was sitting there like, hey, you forgetting somebody, you know?
Yeah. When the Doug and Carson transition happened and all that, that seemed like the perfect time to replace the GM too. He hired that coach. He drafted that QB. He paid that QB. And then he drafted the next QB that made the first QB uncomfortable. All of that was Howie. So at the time, we're thinking, does this guy know what he's doing? You drafted Jalen Reagor and J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, and those were both top 2 round picks. Like, these were your, like, and the Reagor one, the fact that he went a pick before Justin Jefferson, it's like that burned. But and then
my bad, Howard. I'm sorry, bro.
The U-turn, change directions, and get it going the way he has so quickly since. It's really a masterclass.
It's what happens when, you know, I mean, it's no surprise that we're talking about the depth on the 53 or the Eagles in an NFC championship game. That's what happens when you draft well. That's what this looks like, what the formula and the recipe looks like on the offensive side of the ball when you're drafting Dallas Goedert, when you're drafting Mailata and Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens and Tyler Steen, and you're drafting Lane Johnson, not his, but the team drafted. When you're drafting Devontae Smith, even Calcaterra, their backup. On the other side of the ball, it's Nolan Smith, it's Jalen Carter, it's Milton Williams, it's Cooper DeJean, it's Quinyon Mitchell. Like, when you go down,
Jordan
Reed
Davis,
Blankenship,
Josh Sweat,
you know what I mean? You
they're
go
all
down
drafted.
the list, all of them. I mean, and 2 of them this year are up for Defensive Rookies of the Year in Coop and Quinyon. So, I mean, it's no surprise when you draft well and you invest your money wise in free agency, as they can do, and lock your guys up to some team-friendly contracts, as Howie's been able to do. It's no surprise the Eagles are in the position that they are in, and all that kudos goes to Howie and his team for nailing it in not just one draft, not just 2 drafts, but consecutive drafts.
I kind of get the feeling that the Jalen Reagor draft forced Howie to reevaluate the way he kind of did things. Because prior to that, you would often see Howie draft a guy from the small school instead of the big school. And he'd be like, well, this is, you know, this guy has this trait or I'm looking for. And like almost like he was trying to prove he's the smartest guy in the room and could find that hidden gem.
Find that diamond in the rough. Yep.
Whereas after that, he just started getting the best players from the best schools.
Mm-hmm.
You saw the Heisman winner Devontae Smith. You saw multiple players from that Georgia defense, which was one of the best college defenses we had seen in recent years.
Championship winning defense. He went out and got a bunch of winners. That's what he did. He went out and got a bunch of winners.
No, I agree. Let me put a fly in the ointment here, right? Because you're right. He went out and got those Bulldogs. He went out and got himself some Crimson Tide. And we all thought, see, Howie's hitting the SEC. Let's go, Howie. And then 2024 rolls around. He says, you know what? Toledo, I like that. Hold on, wait a minute. Iowa, sign me up. Hey, you guys got someone at Houston Christian? Let me see what I can get for him. So, he went – so, in real talk, we finally saw him turn that corner, go big time, winner, big program, SEC. They know how to ball. And then was he getting for at least a split second, it was, Toledo and Iowa and Houston Christian. We getting cute again? But no, got himself 3 bona fide players out of smaller schools that maybe were overlooked or for whatever reason fell further in the draft than they should have.
Because there at the draft, there was some legit debate between Quinyon Mitchell and the big school
Arnold.
corner Terrion Arnold, who ended up with Detroit.
Yeah.
So, and now Mitchell did have all the measurables, and he had a great Senior Bowl. But there was this question: like, you went to Toledo, you weren't guarding SEC receivers all year, so how good are you? But there's no question about how good this kid is at this point.
It turns out he's pretty good, right?
Right.
We could legit have 1 and 2 for Defensive Rookie of the Year. You know,
unlikely.
Jared Burks has something to say about that.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe more than likely, but it could. If it did happen, I would not be shocked. They both had very good seasons. Those are both very good picks, and it's not only the pick of those 2 players, the decision to go to them early, the decision not to let them sit on the bench and learn all season, to say, hey, let's start playing the young guys early. Let's go with the youth here, and how that kind of transformed things. Because you remember, conversation was a little bit different after that first month. They're 2-2 going into the bye week, and you're kind of wondering, hey, has this defense improved from last year? Is this defense gotten better, as well as whatever questions that we had about
after that
the
Tampa
offense?
Bay game where they exposed us in the middle of the field? It kind of had feelings like last year where we got exposed in the middle of the field a lot. And then here comes Cooper DeJean in for Avonte Maddox. And we didn't have that problem.
Because Avonte's over here talking to Mike Evans about Fortnite, and whatever the hell he's talking to him about. Got that on mic, too. I was done. I said, no, I'm done. I bet you Vic caught that, too, and said, exactly. This is what you're doing? This is what you're doing out there? Nah, take a seat.
Meanwhile, Mitchell's over there talking about, I got you, man.
Yeah, right.
Mitchell's the rookie talking trash to Mike Evans, and then you see Madison, you still playing that Fortnite.
So dumb, man. What are you gonna do? Right? So dumb.
You're absolutely right, though, man. And that's one of those things. Is like, I remember it happening, and Jonesy, we didn't really talk about it much on the show, and because I've worked with you too long, and I've had too many off mic conversations with you sometimes to know what to talk about on the show, what not to talk about. So
depends on how angry you want to make me.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, sometimes it's like, I don't know if I want to necessarily get into the cornerback talking about Fortnite during the game that we're losing. It might be a different conversation had the score been the other way. You're like, hey, you remember when we were blowing out the Bucks and Maddox was talking about, hey, you gonna play some Fortnite later? That might have been different. I might have found that a little bit funny. That might have been
amusing if you're.
I might have been amused by that story. But the other way around, not so much. Real quick, let's move over to the other side of the ball. We talked a little bit about this defense and stopping Jaden Daniels and what this defense has to do. What do you need to see from this offense? Coming, people have had their questions. There have been, debates back and forth. I've had a debate back and forth with somebody I've worked with for a long time about this offense. He shares the marquee with me, but nonetheless,
I'm honest about that. I've been critical of the quarterback his whole career.
Yes, you have.
I think he's a winner. Mm-hmm. I think he absolutely shows up in big moments and make big plays. I also think that there's room to be more efficient in the passing game. I think you hold the ball too long sometimes. I think sometimes you could let the ball go on one of those 50-50 balls. You don't have to wait for the receiver to be open to let the ball go, especially when it's A.J. Brown. One-on-one, give it to him. There are things where I think the quarterback could be better. That does not mean I think you can't win with him. I absolutely think you can win with this quarterback. So the conversation for me on Hurts tends to go to extremes, or he's the best, like he's great or he's terrible. And I think the truth is more somewhere in the middle. He's good enough to win with. Don't expect him to be Pat Mahomes or Joe Burrow either.
Well, they don't win when he tries to be Pat Mahomes or Joe Burrow. If he's throwing for 300 yards, the outcome for the Birds usually isn't ideal. I mean, Jonesy, I agree with you. I have not been a quote unquote critic of Jalen Hurts. I love when they drafted him. I've kind of been one of those dudes that's always in this corner, but I do so with an objective thought. Do I think that he holds on to the ball too long? Yeah, I do. Do I think he needs to know when to get rid of it? Yeah, I do. Do I think sometimes there's too many negative plays? Sure, because the truth is there are. So there's absolutely room for improvement. And if anybody acts like there isn't room for improvement, then you're lying to yourself. That said, I happen to think that the pros outweigh the cons because at the end of the day, he protects the football. In the postseason, you've got to protect the football. The Eagles are +6 this postseason. So is Washington, by the way. They have not turned the football over yet. So at least from an interception, fumble recovery perception, you have the safety and you can view that as a turnover. But for me, he takes care of the football. He does what this offense needs him to do within the formula to win. We know that they are a run-first team. We know that if you can control the football, so take the fact that you have the number one defense in the NFL, just put that in your back pocket. Knowing I have that, let's control the clock. Let's run the football. Let's wear a team down. Let our defense eat on the other side. We're gonna win a lot of football games that way. And I think Jalen knows that. I think that's part of the reason why he does eat the football, probably more than he should, because he doesn't want to put it in harm's way. There still needs to be that clock that needs to go off to just say, dump it, throw it in the dirt.
Throw it out of bounds.
You know what I mean?
He had straight over somebody's head to the sideline.
Pick it, right? He's got to figure that out.
And those are the ones I was saying to JB earlier. Like last week, he was 15 of 20. You see 75% on the stat sheet. I'm like, oh. But to me, it was like, I'd have been okay if that was at 68% instead of 75%, and you threw the ball out of bounds a couple times instead of taking one or two of those sacks.
Yeah, see, last week's tough for me, and I get it. I get it. Trust me, I understand exactly what you're saying. Last week is tough for me because this week he's taken a lot of hell. He's gotten ripped pretty good this week. But there are, and you guys know it, I'm just going to repeat what everybody's been talking about already. There were a lot of plays left on the field where Jalen did his job. Jalen put it right in the chest of A.J. Brown. That's a 50-yard score. And it's Leighton Johnson with the flinch. Obviously, you have the legal man downfield. Like, we legitimately took 3 scores away from that offense. 3 bona fide, legit, not making it up, 3 bona fide scores away from that offense. And if this team had won by 14, 20 points, and Jalen has 3 touchdowns and 230 yards passing, or whatever that looks like, we're talking this week, hey, that offense is humming. Washington better be worried about our quarterback. But because AJ didn't have his best day and there was a couple untimely penalties, we're now looking back and skewing the numbers just a little bit. The stats are the stats. We can't We can't get around that. But when you look at the game with a critical eye and add a little context, I don't think he played as poorly as the numbers want to indicate that he did. But at the end of the day, you're the quarterback, and when games go the way they go, you get the credit and the blame.
Right. Now, last week, like, be clear, I don't think he played poorly last week. Before the game, I said with LA's defense versus our offensive line, the size difference, this game sets up for a heavy dose of Saquon.
Sure.
So before you came on, I was telling JB, if they'd have came out and thrown it 30 times and Hurts threw for 300 yards, that's just a terrible game plan. That was not the way to approach this game. So I didn't expect to come out of the Rams game thinking all the questions about Hurts are answered because he threw for him. Like, that was just not the game you were going to see that, especially with the weather conditions being what they were. This week, I still don't want to necessarily say like throw for 300, but I'd like to see somewhere around 225 rather than what he averages of around 140 in his playoff wins.
So, and I care less about that from him specifically. Look, if he can throw for 200 yards and they win the football game, great. If he throws for 100 yards and they win the football game, great. Right? What I need to see, what I think is more important for me anyway, is I need to see that he can be mobile. I need to see that if they are going to get in that RPO, that he needs to be a threat to Washington to be able to take one, go around the edge, make sure that they account for him. I don't care. God love you. Let's improve that passing game. I love your arm, right? Fine. God bless you. I'm worried about your legs because we saw what happened when Kenny Pickett came in the last game. They became one-dimensional. They were able to load the box, and it made it pretty tough for what the Birds were trying to do. I don't want to get into a shootout. I don't want it to be where we're trying to air the ball out. I want to win the game in the trenches and on the ground, and I think that happens if Jalen can show that he's got some mobility and force them to appreciate what he can do. If he can run for 30 yards, 35 yards on the day, I think that just because that's 1-2 runs, just enough for them to kind of respect what you're trying to do, right? I think that opens up things to where, okay, now it's difficult. We have to account for Jalen's legs. Saquon's running all over. Oh, okay, now they want to run a slant to AJ. Take a deep shot to Devontae. So I think his mobility is what's really going to be the linchpin to opening things up, especially with his arm.
I think something that you saw in the Rams game is I feel like there's a difference in how you load the box. Whereas the Rams kind of they kind of worked to load the box to stop Saquon, and they still weren't able to stop Saquon because to an extent you still have to take into account Jalen Hurts. Whereas
a running quarterback gives you a man advantage, basically.
But I think there's a perception that when a team loads the box, you're automatically going to shut down the running game. And that was not the case. Whereas when you look at that last Commanders game, when they were loading the box against Kenny Pickett and Saquon Barkley, you really could shut down because you don't have to worry about Kenny Pickett.
Absolutely.
So that, to Jason's point, yes, that's, I want to see, especially when you look at that knee injury that Hurts had last week. How he bounces back from that. Now, yes, there was a little bit of practice footage. He looked pretty mobile in practice, but that's going to be a question. Can you stop him? Will Jalen Hurts still be able to be mobile? Will he still be able to get out and make that RPO a threat? Something that they have to take into consideration.
I mean, that's where your game's going to be won and lost.
Yep.
Right there. I mean, again, can they, if they're forced to win the game on the arm of Jalen Hurts and sprinkle in Saquon, can they win the football game? I mean, sure, because you do have weapons in Dallas Goedert. He's got an ankle. We'll see if he plays. He didn't practice yesterday or today. But you've got weapons. I mean, Cal Kater's played well, but you have A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. So they are still built to be able to play through the air. And you've got the number one, again, I keep coming back. You've got the number one defense on the other side. So as long as they can do their job, if they have to win with their arm, I think they can. I think the odds go down. Because, again, I don't want to get into a shootout. I don't. Washington's a hot team. We already talked about how well Jaden Daniels is playing. I'd rather not get into that type of game. I don't think it rules out their ability to win. I'm more comfortable if homeboy's a little mobile, right? Can let Saquon eat and then pick him apart a little bit here and there with his arms. I mean, that we've seen it all year. That's the recipe. That's the formula.
We've seen the Eagles formula, and as Jonesy had talked about what he expected to see this past Sunday against the Rams. One thing I said coming out of the Packers game, going into the Rams game, is I felt like we were setting ourselves up for the same conversation. Whereas you weren't going to necessarily see that passing game throw the ball all over the field, and the defense was going to win and Saquon was going to win, and people were going to ask, can they win with this style of offense? And I feel like the Commanders are the type of team that necessarily they're talented. Yes, they're up and coming team, but I'm not quite sure if they're that good of a team to force the Eagles' hands to make Jalen Hurts have to throw the ball to win. Whereas I could very well see us next week having a conversation going into a Super Bowl, a possible Super Bowl, with but asking the same questions. Okay, I don't know if what people want to see from this passing game. I'm not quite sure the Commanders are a good enough team to make you see it. Like, I could see beating the Commanders and still asking these questions. Can you win with this offense? Still
to get the right run defense.
Yeah. So, you're setting up for another game of Saquon running all over the field and, another 12 for 18 night with 75 yards passing, but a win.
So, I mean, it's a great point. And where my head went, honestly, JB, is I don't know there's a team in the NFL that would force the Eagles to have to air it out. I mean, we've seen stout defensive lines. You've seen, bad team, but the Jags, stout defensive line. You saw what they did to Baltimore. You saw what they did to Pittsburgh. So even if the Eagles do advance to the Super Bowl and they're matched up with, call it Buffalo or KC, because KC's got a good D line. But even KC is not a line that I sit there and say, can't run on them. Yes, you can. So I don't know that, and this is part why the Eagles run the offense that they run, is because you can't stop them. You may minimize them here and there, and they may not get 7 yards a clip, but the Eagles leverage their running game the way other teams leverage their passing game. They are explosive through the running game, and I don't care how you get it. Explosive plays are key to winning a football game. You want to get it through a 50-yard throw? Great. If you can get it on the ground with 70, 80-yard runs, great. That's the way the Eagles are built, and that's the formula that's worked. It's not just in theory. They've gotten their big plays on the ground. So for me, I don't view any of the teams left in the playoffs, whether that be the Commanders, the Bills, or the Chiefs, as a team that can prevent that from happening.
Well, I'll say I think the Chiefs' defense could, with the exception that the Chiefs haven't scored 30 points all year. So even if they do slow you down some, they're not putting up the type of points that make you say, oh, we have to start throwing, throw. You're still in the game because it's a low-scoring game against Kansas City. So to your point, I really don't see anyone this year that could force the Eagles out of the way they want to play.
Which is good for the Eagles, again, because when they get out of that way and Jalen does go up and fill a stat sheet, they usually don't come out on the winning end. And me, I don't care about a stat sheet. Win the damn game. I don't care how many yards you throw for, win the damn game. And they've shown that when we give that ball to 26 and he eats up the field as he's done all season long, it ends in the W. And at the end of the day, that's what we all play for.
I hear you. All right, look, I got to be honest with you. Jonesy and I, we did away with predictions after the bye week. We used to do predictions every week, talk about the scores, and then we pretty much did away with them. Jonesy says he's not superstitious, but I believe in sticking with what works. So we're not going to ask for a prediction, but I am going to ask.
I wouldn't give it because you said you stopped doing it. I wouldn't give it.
We stopped doing that,
right.
but
we stopped after the bye week.
We stopped after the bye week. We were doing predictions every week. Our guests would do a prediction. We would talk about it. And after the bye week, I think we might have forgotten or something, and then
we started winning, and we just never went back to it.
Never went back to it. But I am going to ask you on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence level going into Sunday?
10.
There you go.
And I say that because I've said after the bye week, right? Now the bye week was for everybody. Who the hell is this team? We don't know. And then they started to turn a corner. We felt that. And all season long, week by week by week, I started telling myself, well, okay, now hold on. I'm starting to believe. And then the next week was, yeah, okay, this team is for real. And the next week was, hey guys, it's Detroit, Philadelphia, and then everybody else. And then it became, well, wait a minute. Detroit and Philadelphia are right. I have been supremely confident in this team in believing that they are simply different. They are built different. And I'll be honest with you, saying that scares me. Saying that this team is built different and actually believing that this team is built different scares me, because when I acknowledge that and I accept that, that only means one thing.
Yeah.
They better win the Super Bowl, because I believe they are good enough to do it. We've only seen it once. So the odds are, with that comes this expectation or reality that this may not go my way. Supremely confident that this team is built different. Thus far in the postseason, they've shown me they're built different. I wasn't scared of the Packers. I wasn't scared of the Rams. I'm damn sure not scared of the Commodores. So for real, if you want to ask me how confident I am, I'm locked in at a 10 on this team.
There you go.
So I'll say this real quick. JB and I first worked together on the Sports Shop back in Super Bowl years, 2017.
Okay.
When Carson Wentz went down and Nick Foles came in, I never lost confidence in that team. Because my opinion was Nick Foles isn't great, but when you can dominate on the offensive line and you can dominate on the defensive line and you can run the ball, the Eagles were first in the league in rushing that year, you can still win a lot of football games. Football games, as cute as we want to get with all the other stuff, are still won in the trenches. And that's exactly how I feel about this team. You could dominate on the offensive line, you could dominate on the defensive line, and you can consistently move the ball on the ground. It's hard for anyone to beat you. So I'm with you. My confidence is at a 10 as well.
First of all,
even saying that is scary. Because what is this, the Bucks coming in again? Well, I feel like we got the Bucks coming in 0-3 again. You're gonna rip my heart out. Ugh.
First of all, Jonesy, you're not slick. Jonesy wants to bring up the Sports Shop and how confident he was with the switch to go from Carson Wentz to Nick Foles, because he knows that I went on that same exact show and was scared to death to go to Nick Foles and just was like, oh my God, oh damn, oh here it's all over. When do pitchers and catchers report? Here it is. And I had to be the one to eat the crow, because I also admit, because once again, I am a fan of accountability. I hold me accountable. I was never a Nick Foles. I was never a big Nick Foles guy. I was a huge Nick Foles doubter, and that man proved me wrong. Didn't think he could win the Super Bowl. He ended up winning it. I had to come out here and say, hey, bruh, I was wrong. I'm sorry. And yes, so honestly, I have been one of those people. I've been one of those fraidy cat dudes. I've been one of those guys, been sitting up there, man. I remember the pain of losing to the Bucks. Truly believe, selling out for my beliefs. Like, all right, here it is. It's about to happen. And then it didn't happen. I am that guy, but you know what? I have learned, when you got something, you got something. And this team
is special.
This team is special. This team is special, and there have been special teams that have made it harder to recognize how special they are. And with this team, I think it is pretty obvious. You see what you have in your quarterback. You see what you have in your running back. You see what they have built in the defense. So I think it's pretty. For me, it's not a hard sell to say, hey, this team could do it. This team could pull it out. This team could be special.
You're not scared. You're not a scaredy cat. I talked about this on the show last night because I genuinely believe in this. There's a difference between being nervous and being scared.
Mm-hmm.
To me, when you're nervous, it's because you understand the moment, right? When you're nervous, you're aware of what's going on around you. You're aware of what you're about to get into, the impact, and what's at stake, because you're about to accomplish something pretty special, and that makes you nervous, right? That's okay. It means you're alert. You're a human being. You're supposed to feel a certain way in big moments. When you're scared, that means you're unprepared. That means you don't feel like you belong. That means something ain't right. There's a reason that you're afraid, and whether that's lack of preparation, whether that's you feel like you don't belong or you're going to be exposed, this team is not scared. You should not be scared. We as a fan base should not be scared. Nervous, that's okay, because we understand this moment. We know where it's been before. We know what we're on the cusp of and how much it's going to mean to everybody. So nerves is one thing. But we have zero business to be scared because this team is prepared. They are built different. They are special. It's just a matter of, look, you got to go play football on Sunday and earn it. You got to go prove it now, right? That's why they play the game. So let's go be big boys, pull up our pants, and go do a job.
There you go. Scared implies you don't belong here, and this team belongs here.
Correct.
Correct.
Without a doubt.
I feel you.
Looking at the clock, we probably got to get out of here soon. Can't keep you all night. But I do have one question for you.
Go for it.
Being we're basically at the end of the season, looking back on the year, who do you think was the bigger addition, Saquon or Vic Fangio?
Oh, what a question. The bigger addition, Saquon or Vic Fangio? I'll say Saquon, and this is why. Do I think the Eagles' offense could be as impactful, as troublesome, as dynamic as they are currently without Saquon? No, because I'm biased. I'm a Penn Stater, and I've loved Saquon back to his Penn State days. So I think he's one of the best, if not the best, running backs in the league. Behind that offensive line, I just think, I mean, we see it, right? He's one of 9 players to rush for 2,000 yards. You control the football, you win a lot of football games. I don't think in 2024 you have to have the top-ranked defense to win a championship. I think you have to have a decent defense, top 12 to win a championship. I don't think you have to have the number 1 overall. It certainly helps, and it will help their chances. But it's an offensive-driven league, and if you could have a top 10 defense, I still think that they could have a good shot at winning the chip. So for that reason, I'll say Saquon. I'm talking with my heart because I really do love what Vic Fangio has done with this defense.
Now, you said you're a Penn Stater. You went to Penn State?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what's up.
I'm not a fraud.
No. See, the thing is, this was a conversation that Jonesy and I also had when Saquon was coming into the league, and it was a 2-part conversation because one, Saquon coming to the Eagles rights one of the greatest wrongs in sports. You know,
the Giants made me hate him.
Yes, you know, we talked
I loved
about
him in college.
Yes, we talked about Penn State players that we loved that we immediately hated once they got into the league.
Michael,
and I always thought number one, LeVar Arrington. Loved him at Penn State. One of my favorite, one of my all-time favorite Penn State players.
But then he went to Washington.
Then he went to Washington and I had to spend the rest of my life hating LeVar Arrington.
I have a LeVar Arrington bobblehead, and it is in a Washington uniform. It is stuffed in a box in a closet in the basement. I won't even take it out. because it's the wrong uniform. I can't do it. It was a gift. It It was a gift because he knew I loved LeVar Arrington. I was like, that's great. Let's put it away. It's never going to see the light of day.
LeVar Arrington was my guy at Penn State. And now, and what the problem is, I now see it. History has repeated itself with Micah Parsons because I loved Mike at Penn State. And now he's with the Cowboys, and I just hate him more and more. And I don't want to. I absolutely don't.
I don't know how much longer he's going to be with the Cowboys, though.
Well,
that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, but
let's see what Abdul Carter does. They got another cat coming out, Abdul Carter.
Oh, that kid looks like a monster.
Let's find out where he goes and figure out if we're able to like him, or we got to put him on the list too.
But as far as Saquon goes, it was like I loved him in college, and I knew I was going to end up having to hate him if he went to the Giants, and that made me hate the Giants more. Like, you're making me turn on one of my favorite players. I hate you guys. And then who knew that the Giants would just end up being idiots and letting him go to the Eagles in what has to be one of the biggest front office blunders, and then it happens on television. On top of all that,
right? The one time technology really works in our favor, that's phenomenal. Thank you so much.
Like y'all made the biggest front office blunder in a generation, a generationally bad decision on television. Oh my goodness! Something like that could never happen here.
$40 million quarterback, so that you can hand it off to the $12 million running back. He didn't think that was a good idea.
Sign me up for that, because that sounds delicious.
And the craziest thing is, when you talk about Saquon being a $12 million, $13 million running back, but then you realize the genius of Howie Roseman, his cap hit is around $4 million-ish this year.
And look, Jonesy, even so, in the realm of things, $12 million, $13 million for a dynamite playmaker. I mean, because there's wide receivers that are booty cheeks that are getting 18, 19 million a year. So if you're telling me I can get an elite playmaker in the backfield for 13 million and then structure it down to 4 million or
13
sprinkle some Howie seasoning on it, right? To make it special.
13 mil for 2,000 yards and choosing not to break the record.
I believe the number is 25 wide receivers have a higher average number, and more than 30 have a higher cap hit.
So how we knew. Look, when everybody zigs, Howie zags.
It's all right.
He's been doing it his entire career. He looked at the wide receiver market blowing up, and we've always devalued running backs. There's a handful of teams that said, wait a minute, Baltimore being one of them, the Packers being one of them, the Eagles being one of them, that they reinvested back into the running backs. And it's no surprise that those three who signed as free agents had monster years this year.
Well, the teams and the players all had very good seasons.
Correct.
All right, real quick, Jason, before we let you go, one more time, tell people where they can find you, man.
That's PHLY Cheap Seats. You can hit up the website, PHLYCheapseats.com, for all the socials. You can find me on X. I find it weird saying X. You can find me on X at All Ashworth. That's probably the two main ways. If you're on the gram, it's Mr. Ashworth. I don't know. I don't play too much on the socials. I like to engage, but it's always going to be sports talk. But for everybody, Cheap Seats at PHLY associated, you're going to go to PHLYCheapseats.com.
All right, one more time. That's Jason Ashworth of PHLY Cheap Seats. Shout out to E-Rock. Shout out to Black Gritty. Those brothers need to come on. We need to get them on with Jonesy and Brown too. We need
say less. Say the word. Say the word. I'll
tell them dudes they need to come through. They need. We need to make that happen. Jason, thank you, good brother.
No, my pleasure, gentlemen. You guys have a good night.
All right, you too, my friend. All right, that's my man Jason Ashworth. Always a good guest. Always a good get to get on this show, man. Appreciate that, man. Hey, you tell us what you think of this show. Hit us up. You can hit us up on socials. We always around there talking to somebody. Facebook, Instagram, and Twix. It's still a thing, bruh. Get your head out of your hands. Twix is still a thing, bruh. At BITW Sports, at Jonesy and Brown. Hit us up on the website, BITWsports.com. We're everywhere. Tell us what you think. Tell us what the Eagles need to do. Shout out to my auntie. My auntie hit us up on the show while we're doing the show. Let me pull that comment up. My auntie said, let's see. See, I had it right here, and I lost it. She gave her opinion. She said, in order for the Eagles to beat Washington, they must get better with their plays, protecting the quarterback, and just play like they want to win. That's what my auntie said. Hey, Aunt Deborah. Hey, Aunt Debbie. She said that. Shout out to my Aunt Debbie. She loves the Birds too. Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds. We'll be talking about this next week. We're gonna be, it's gonna be a good time, man. We're gonna have fun, man. Your confidence levels on the same level as Jason? You had a 10?
Yeah, I fully expect to win this week.
All right, me too, brother. All right, y'all have a great weekend. This has been the Jonesy and Brown Show. We'll see you guys next week. Peace, y'all.
Peace.